Perfecto. Bienvenidos a los que se acaban de
Okay,
sumar.
so welcome everybody. Let us begin with today's session, which is the second workshop session on LACCHAIN. This is the second and last workshop, which is divided in two, and we are currently in the innovation track. These workshops have the goal of giving the knowledge related to the third connexus track which is innovation. Let us not forget that we already have a date. It is between November the 12th to 14th, Sao Paulo, Brazil. We're still waiting for the venue to be appointed. But this is the second LACPASS Connectathon. We're going to be working on three tracks. One is the IPS, International Patient Summary, based on the IPS and MHD. The other one is the vaccination certificate based on the DDCC, and this one, which is innovation. So, in order not to take up too much of your time and to hand it over to Antonio and the LACCHAIN team, I just want to remind you that this is the last workshop that has covered the necessary knowledge for the three tracks. And we will start from August the 17th on with the pre-connectathon work. And the objective in the months to come is to have the support from IHE, which will be with us every so often, giving specific knowledge on the test platform, like registering, which is the first of the workshops, and that's the one that we've already planned for August the 17th. We'll have 2 or 3 more IHE workshops, which are very important. One is on connectivity, another one also for tests prior to the connectivity itself. Remember that all of the material is made available in YouTube. The previous session has already been uploaded in the Raxel LACPASS, but also the links to the YouTube channels. So without further ado, then let me hand it over to Antonio Leal, who will be delivering today's workshop. Thank you, Carlos. Greetings to all. It's a pleasure to be here on this second workshop. This workshop was prepared by Eric Pacheco, my colleague, and myself. And in this case, I will be the one delivering. Okay, you should be able to see my screen in just a second. You can see it, right? Yes, we can see it. Okay, so today's agenda. This is the innovation workshop, and the agenda covers the information content that we have here. We're going to go about the basic view at the technologies. We could go into more details, but we just want to show what's available currently, what we are working with, and where we want to go with the workshops that we have with LACPASS. So we're going to be talking about the Web 3.0, but the basic side of it, and a general introduction to that. We're going to look at DID, decentralized identities, which is a key part of what has been called digital identity. We're also going to be looking at the digital wallets, verifiable credentials, and we're going to issue a certificate to see how it behaves in real life. So the Web 3.0 has many different definitions. Conceptually speaking, it has many different prongs, but we're going to take a look at the definition that we can use. It's an evolution of Web 2.0, and in this case considers decentralization and uses a blockchain technology. There are many different concepts for Web 3.0, like artificial intelligence and others. But in this sense, we simply talk about the domain of the technology that we are using. Basically, this evolution from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0 allows to have decentralized ecosystem based on blockchain technologies at different natures and multiple domains that are all based on blockchain technology because of the decentralization concept. And an important thing that comes up is the tokens, a token-based economy. But the concept of using a token already falls as part of this ecosystem. And the possibility of having decentralization and tokens is very much based on identity. So let's look at the evolution of the web. In the 90s and at the beginning of 2000 was a static content. The internet service providers proposed or offered hosting, web pages, and the information was rather static, but it was able to disseminate the concept of the web, and it became adopted. Web 2.0 is where organizations realize the power that the web has to share and to have many different people connected, a large number of users in one space. So the content becomes more dynamic. First, because web technologies evolve, HTML5, JavaScript, CSS, the Ajax concept, where we can have asynchronous JavaScript by injecting content to the website, towards the customers. So the browser became a client that allows more richness in terms of the content, but also the internet infrastructure allows for the databases and backends where we can have then dynamic content focused on the users. The service and trade vendors become more available, like Google, Amazon, and all of the clouds too, which allow for this infrastructure and allows for the web to expand and having large adoption. But probably the most important part is the business web, banks, also the supply chains. They are based on the web now. ERPs, SAP, for example, is one of the ERPs that has become widely available through web technologies. And also another interesting case for trade and service vendors is that there was always an intermediary. If you were going to buy to Amazon, Amazon is the intermediary, and we, as a user, we have a credit card, we have an identifier, which is a user, and Amazon knows you within their domain, but it allows you to carry out the purchase because they are a centralized intermediate that has a means of payment, and we have the means of payment that we can carry out the purchase with. But it's a very agnostic process, and identity there is not very important. And basically, we've bought just a good, and we are going to have it thanks to a courier or a service. It could be too. For example, you buy a cloud or a space in a container or storage space, those kind of things. But there's always an intermediary who is playing the role of agency, the governance. And obviously, well, the social media, they had a boost, and especially going hand in hand with mobile devices that came up as of 2008 and 2009, from the Blackberries and iPhones and all of the next ones. So Web 3.0, Web 2.0 was not a value network. It was simply one way, or they say that it's reading and writing, but it had very little interaction capabilities, but you could trade only on a limited basis. But with 3.0 and these new technologies, we can see a great decentralization capacity. Blockchain networks allow precisely for having a decentralized set of participants that can come to consensus and carry out transactions where there does not have to be a centralized intermediary that the agencies these. Together with interoperability, which is still a little bit raw, but in the future, blockchain networks will be interoperable, just like the Web 2.0, which was the boost of business applications in order to have all of these platforms that are a whole set of systems on the back end designed to provide a user experience. So Web 3.0, there is a concept that has been coming up, just as we said before, that has already been around for years, which is having a digital identity, which is sovereign and decentralized. When I have an identity and I'm recognized in the system by a blockchain network or any other place, that's a unique identifier and it identifies me exclusively. It allows me to have a large number of users. This digital identity will allow me to standardize the fact that we humans have something that represents us in a system that can be decentralized, and this gives it trust. And there are applications that work because we have an intermediary and it's trust. I'm not going to directly buy from the supplier or someone who is selling sports articles because it can be a bit cumbersome, but with an intermediary, it makes it a lot easier. But they concentrate the governance or the capability for the business. But trust allows for decentralization where there is visibility of what's taking place. Also, tokens. Tokens are well known, the ERC20, which is the token of the Ethereum and the NFTs, which became quite famous in the last 2 years because of the fact of carrying out tokens and people seeing all of the advantages and all of these values given the benefits. And they can be used for many different concepts, and we're still undergoing that road.
Va a ser la billetera digital, porque la billetera digital va
Digital wallet is something that is key here because it's going to have your digital identity, and for this you need a digital wallet that will allow you to have tokens, but also a whole set of digital assets that you can carry with you in your digital wallet, in your mobile device. That obviously has some security aspects, but it allows you to keep all of this information secure, and also decentralized apps which are based on blockchain. These are applications that are a little different to what we have been doing in these last 2 decades with the web applications, where there is a concept of decentralization and also governance needed to be managed. So all of this takes us to a value-added internet. And it's called a value internet because now we can have a property over digital assets and tokens that represent money, and they are under my control. They're not under the bank's control or an intermediary like Amazon. I own them, and I can trade or exchange this with whomever I want, whether I send tokens to someone through from one digital wallet to another, which is the exchange of tokens with this new concept of decentralized finance, or I can carry out a purchase, or I can have a token-based ecosystem where there are communities that want to have financial transactions and people that had never before had access to a bank or a financial institution by having a digital wallet and are a part of this ecosystem that knows how to do it well. uh, we're doing this, for example, with sugarcane, with coffee, with cocoa in this region. And these systems recognize the value of what's being done. There is a traceability of the value chain, which is based on blockchain, so that we can have an immutable traceability, and then look at the quality of the products, like origins, denominations. And when it's sold, there could be an exchange of tokens that someone will be able to exchange for money. Or sometimes we can have an ecosystem where with these producers, by creating these tokens, can go to service providers, whether they be farmers, for example, change that for raw materials and continue with the operations. And all of this is absolutely traceable given the solutions that are being built. So it's a value internet. This is the piece that was missing in order to have an infrastructure in the World Wide Web that allows users to have their identity and their trading that falls under their control. Obviously, this is still evolving and many things are still being defined and progressing. So going back to DID, decentralized identifier, why is it important? Well, because it allows to link individuals and organizations with a unique identifier that can be used to link them to certain pieces of information. We may remember what we saw last week. It's an identifier that allows for a decentralized digital identity. It identifies a subject, an individual, an organization, and it is an URI, which has information on how that can be authenticated and to prove the identity of that DID. And it's basically a string, which is a little bit longer than before. There is a scheme, which is the DID. Well, it's similar to HTTP, where there is a method for solving the DID. And obviously, there is a DID method-specific identifier, which is a chain of characters, which is hexadecimal. So those are the elements that we saw in the last workshop. So, and a set of public and private keys, as we mentioned last week, and Eri explained very well how this works when you onboard an identity or when you onboard an entity. So the DID allows for a decentralized identifier, that is to say, an individual, because remember that here we are thinking that what we want to do is to talk about value and to see how internet has evolved. But this plays an important role because not only do we have a digital asset, but we can also have personal information. In a digital wallet, I can have health certificates, different types. We can have the COVID vaccination, yellow fever, polio vaccinations, which is what's been built by the Raxel team. And also the patient information under the IPS standard. So the possibility of having decentralized identifiers with corresponding verifiable credentials then has quite a lot of value, and it becomes very important when they become included, and it's important also for digital health in general. Also, this could be developed for education, your diplomas, your certificates, your degrees, and you decide who you want to share that with, and that information belongs to you, which is self-sovereign. Verifiable credentials are W3 standard, W3C standard, and it has one or more declarations on someone. It could be my nationality, identity, my date of birth, the gender, citizenship. This in this domain are called claims. These are statements for an individual. And this person then, who is the subject, is called the subject, but it's also called the holder, because they are the ones who hold this credential in their wallet as if it were a regular national ID number. Another important concept here is that there is an issuer, someone that issues this verifiable credential. Just like we said last week, we talked about these registries of trust where an issuer is recognized and there is a trust that that entity is part of a registry of trust, like, for example, a Ministry of Health within it's basically an issuer that can be trusted that will generate credentials. And the other important part is that that credential can be verified. We can do that in real time and cross borders. Well, what we're looking for in the health area here is that instead of having the piece of paper and instead of having all of those primitive information, having a document is to have a verifiable credential that can be verified in any part of the world, obviously with certain standards, and that can optimize the process and that it can be a lot more comfortable for everyone involved, also improving global health, generally speaking. And this is what we said. The subject of the credential is the decentralized identifier that have the credential attributes. This is a small diagram, a brief diagram that comes from W3C, which shows the concept. We have an issuer here who is usually registered in this verifiable data registry. They issue credentials towards a holder who basically receives these and they can store them and they can be presented to be verified. There is a concept called presentation here, which is given to the verifier, and one way or another through different devices, they can verify that that credential was issued by a valid issuer, that it has not expired, and that it's therefore valid, and that it is still considered in force. And what we have here, this is basically this registry of trust that we have explained since last week, which has the identifiers and the records that those credentials were issued. Let us not forget that these credentials have information, but that information, there is a mathematical function which is called a hash, and that credential is signed, and that is an encrypted signature, which is what we hold in the registry. We don't have any sensitive data or any information on any individual. It's just the encryption, the verification that was issued, because all of the other information belongs to the user. So that gives us the possibility of having self-sovereign data, and that this can be a decentralized ecosystem. So now I want to issue a credential. Excuse me just a second, because I'm going to change my device. Before going on, do you have any questions? This might be a good point in time to ask questions while I prepare my other device. This is a digital wallet of a LACCHAIN partner, one of the entities that are part of the LACCHAIN that we talked about last week. And this wallet includes all the identity standard aspects that we have been talking about. Last week, we said that we have a layer called LACCHAIN IDs based on ILT, and then it has identity that has all of the decentralized components, the verifiable credentials, issuers that can sign the credentials. All of that, those technologies are part of a layer that we have available as an infrastructure and that the users can take advantage of on the LACCHAIN network. So this is a digital wallet. There is a credential here that was issued by the partner who did this, and you can see it's a JSON on the back end. It's a JavaScript structure, and it has this structure: course, a description, categories, information on the course. It also has who signs it, who has signed this credential. This, this is the DID. You can take a look at the structure. It has that scheme, which is DID. It has the method called ETHR, Ethereum, and a LACCHAIN has a resolution method, which is from DID, which is on a network that we had before. I don't want to go into too much detail, but that decimal there is that string that we saw before, the decentralized identifier. This issuer is registered in the LACCHAIN network in an intelligent or smart control called DID registry, where we have the issuers that can issue them. And as we explained last week, as Eric said, that issuer can be part of a chain of trust, which allows me to solve that chain of trust and to see who that issuer is. And also going back to what Eric said, we can have a country or a Ministry of Health, which is the root. Let's say that LACPASS is the root at the regional speaking. Then we have the Ministry of Health from Peru, which can be the next one, and maybe a center or an institution that does a vaccination can be the third in this chain of trust. And they can verify that all of these issuers are valid and reliable. I'm not going to show that, but I'm not going to verify it here. But I'm going to issue now a credential. I'll show you. I will show you what the credential structure is. This is an education credential. We have also health credentials, but we are adapting them for the Connectathon. You're going to look at, you're going to be able to see the structure. So what we have on the network is an API, an identity API. We create a credential, just like you create a DDCC certificate in the exercise that you are normally do. And that DDCC that you're going to create that leaves you with a standard format, which has been regulated. The idea is to sign the idea then is for an issuer to sign it. Let's say the country node, each country will sign theirs, and this will go to the DID, to a wallet that has been identified. And I will show you in just a minute. I'm issuing the credential, and this means taking the credential, signing it, and sending it over a channel so that it arrives. Yeah, I have issued it already. Let me now refresh the screen. You will see that it is going to a mailbox. We've called it, but it's not actually an email. It's pulling the credential. And you will see it. There it is. So this is a credential. This is a pilot that we put together last year for Red Clara, which is the network for Latin American cooperation of universities in the region. We also have Colombia, Chile, Mexico, and Ecuador. There's a whole set of Latin American networks, and we are here trying to simulate a diploma. This is a diploma then that what I will receive, and it will be issued by a valid institution. And this is an example with University of La Serena, which is part of the REUNA network. This network, REUNA, is also a part of this whole larger network of networks. So there is a chain of trust there. We have a REUNA within a contract, just like Eric showed last week, with the corresponding hierarchies in order to build a chain. Red Clara then is the root. Reuna is part of that root, and then University of La Serena is the one that issues the credential. Let me click then on this credential, and you can see that it has like a clip, like an attachment, and that's the PDF. This credential has been issued under my name. The signers are two universities, two people from the university's secretariat. And they are the ones that signed this credential at the academic level. Then there is the signature from the university itself. So this is a verifiable credential which was built by all of the participants of this pilot. That is to say, if we're looking for an academic credential, well, there is a standard. We can see it like a schema.org, which has all of the verifiable credentials that are open source. And what we did is that we worked based on the academic type of credentials, and all of those fields that we felt were important. Well, we added them. You can see here that we've got the title, the description. There's an URL so that you can take a look at the information on the program when it was issued, August the 3rd. That is to say, today. You can see the institution. You can see the course status. It tells me that I have approved it, passed it, and I have here a QR code in order to verify that within this university it was properly issued. And you can see that it has been issued and signed. And we're making some adjustments here because aside from this DID, we will say that it was the university because we're making a match in order to make sure that it looks well. Now, obviously, the issuance and the signature are the same, and we can see that the DID does change a little bit because this is one that we have on the LACCHAIN network, which is the main testing network that we have. You can see then that I'm using a DID with a method which is called LACCA, which is LACCHAIN, and it's open protest, and you can see the string identifier. So let us verify. Now we're going to carry out a verification process, which is what we were talking about last week. Let me click on verify, and you can see a verification in real time. So it's verifying the credentials of validity. It is valid. The status, it's not being revoked. The issuer, valid. It says here Universidad de La Serena, well, we're making a change here, but this is precisely the chain of trust. And I apologize because it's not all ticked, but this is the public directory that Eric mentioned. It's basically the PKD, public key directory, and this is the one for Red Clara, which is the root. And Reuna is the Reuna list of trust, which is the Chilean network. And within this list, it will include all of those entities or academic institutions that they can accredit or that they can confirm that will be able to issue these credentials. And in this particular case, it's similar to health. There's going to be, or LACPASS or RAXEL is going to be the root. The different ministries of health or health authorities from the countries will be a part of that public LACPASS directory. And then each of them, as Eric explained, will define all of those health institutions that have been approved in order to issue the COVID vaccination certificate. Let me accept this, and I'm doing this on the wallet. What will happen in the near future, and what we're going to be doing also for the Connectathon, is that there's going to be a verification application that when will share a QR code, and I can scan that QR code and I can verify that credential because we know the keys of who has assigned this, and we can say whether this credential was properly issued by a valid, verifiable entity. Another interesting thing for this case is so that we can move between the physical and digital world is that we can keep this credential as a diploma. So I can here click on show the PDF. It's going to take a little bit because it's creating the credentials PDF and then it's downloadable. And this is like the old printed diploma, only that it's digital. So this is the PDF. Let me zoom in. All of this data are part of the credential. The national ID, the holders' data, the program, the issuance date, who signed the credential or this diploma, and this QR code, which is the QR that within a La Serena system, the University of La Serena system, allows you to verify this diploma. And this is also legal resolution data that are part of the credential. So we can download it or I can close it. So to understand the digital wallet or to close this part, I can go to the wallet and I can click on my profile. You can see my data there. It has a whole set of security elements and something else that's quite important. What if I lose my wallet and I lose all of my data? Let's say that the university will have a registry of the credentials or the diplomas, but obviously, what happens if I lose my digital wallet? There is an entity called custodian. These are basically entities that play the role of saving important security elements and the contents of a digital wallet, tokens, digital IDs, the deed for your house, your apartment. It allows you to store all of this information and under certain recovery mechanisms, and there are different methods you can recover this data without having to go to all of the separate entities. And that's the importance of this technology. So what I wanted to show you is that this is a pseudonym that I have here, and the wallet allows you to have that, and this is my DID. So when this credential was issued, let me show you the verifiable credentials, the raw one. And this allows for this credential to come to me and the registry of that credential. The possibility of verifying it and the validity is because we have encrypted that in blockchain, and the issuer who wrote it can be validated under a whole set of rules and some smart contracts that allow us to do this. And in this case, the wallets also allow us to share this. This is what I did not show. If I click here on this button, I can share it. Yeah, that sharing button at the top right, and it allows me to have a QR code, share with others, or share with social media. I'm gonna have here show QR. And you can see that this is a dynamic QR code. It is constantly changing, but it keeps the data. This with the corresponding security measures. So if someone is going to present this certificate, when scanning, this QR, which is changing, which is dynamic, will allow for the verifier to capture it, but it also gives you some security aspects that QR cannot be forced or cannot change. In fact, there are QRs with colors also that can allow you to have a whole set of extensions. And I want to show you what the credential looks like. It's quite basic, really. It's simply a text editor and the credential. Let me try and make it a little larger. This is the structure of the verifiable credential, and it is based on the W3C standard. We can explain later.
Lo que hablábamos de cuáles son los contratos inteligentes que están involucrados acá. Bueno, este es el Claims Verifier, que es cuando abrí la presentación que mencioné que las credenciales verificables contienen claims o aspectos, atributos de cada uno. Esos claims, digamos, o el registro de
Those
eso,
claims or the registry of having done a hash function on those claims stay in a smart contract which have this address in the network. And this is a known address within the blockchain. And this trust list is the Reuna, is Reuna because we're issuing this under Reuna. And it allows to say that University of La Serena, the issuer, is part of that list of trust. This list of trust allows me to move towards the root so that we can actually know that it is part of a Red Clara, of the Clara network. It could also be the network containing the health establishments in a country. This is part of what we have developed with all of the participants, and that the ID that I showed you in my wallet is here. And I have it, I can send this credential, and this guarantees that it's only going to go to that wallet that has me identified within this blockchain network. Oh, well, the rest of the data that you've seen. So let me go back to the presentation.
entonces dentro de los pasos que queríamos cerrar, bueno,
Okay, so we've looked at the issuance, but now to close the idea, of what Eric presented last week regarding encrypted signatures. You didn't see the process, but it's a process that goes through the API that were implemented. I take that JSON, I give it a structure, I call that API, and that API with the keys involved, these from University of La Serena, we do the encrypted signatures. You can see that we've done the verification. Not only did we check the signatures, but also the credential. And also what Eric mentioned last week, in this particular case, we can have a rotation or a revoking of some of the encrypted signatures because, I don't know, authorities, health authorities change in the ministry, and that means that we need to have a new set of keys there so that they are not committed or they are not compromised or fail in the process. Another important concept that I forgot to say is that a credential can be revoked. The issuer at a point in time, depending on the model and depending on the design, can revoke a credential because, I don't know, let's say that we find out that there was someone who didn't have a regular academic process. Well, they can look for the credential, and the credential is not deleted, it's simply revoked. And as you can see, when we do that verification, it will come up as not valid because it has been revoked or it may have expired. And therefore, the validity and revoking are different things. So validity is because who has issued that credential says, well, this is no longer valid for whatever reason. And with that, Carlos, then I have finished. And if there are any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them. Thank you, Antonio. Are there any questions, any doubts? We still have a few minutes. If there are no questions, then we can close the session. Just like the previous ones, this will be in the LACPASS YouTube channel, but also in the Moodle, so that you can revisit them on demand. There are no questions? Okay, so the LACCHAIN team, as part of the second Connectathon, will be there also supporting us. Within the activities that are coming for the pre-Connectathon, there is a whole set of tasks that we want to structure so that the technical teams can carry out so that they can be well prepared. There will be an instance to try some of these things out and also some of the LACCHAIN tools and that Eric and Antonio have shown us. So that's the only recommendation. So if you have any doubts, go back to the workshop. You can ask any questions at any point in time, and you can start getting prepared for the next pre-Connectathon stage, because the idea is that we can do some practical things with the technical teams, one-on-one with the different countries. No questions then, so I think then that we can call this a course adjourned. Thank you so much. Thank you for the support that we are receiving, and we will keep all of these in mind. We want to thank all of the attendees and have a great rest of the week and a good weekend too. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Muchas gracias a todos. Buenas tardes.
Gracias a todos. Buenas tardes.
Bien, gracias.
Gracias.
Carlos, te escribo un correo ahora para alinearnos para ver cómo hace.
Buenísimo. Hablamos. Chao, chao.
Entonces,